Hey folks, this is the Capitalism for Good podcast, and I am AndreaMasterson, the host of it. And I am not a professional creator. I am not a professional podcaster. I am a small business owner who is set out to just have conversations with other small business owners who are doing things from my perspective in the right way so that I can learn from them in real time, and then obviously share it with anyone else who might be interested in it. So it's 100 interviews with business leaders making a positive impact on their community. If you are interested in an ad-free version, that exists at patreon.com/capitalism for good. There's also on that Patreon a level that will get you into the Between the Interviews series, which is a Patreon exclusive behind the scenes. What are all of the thoughts, things, thinking, kind of tying it all together? What does that mean to the larger collective? And what am I doing with all of it? All of those kinds of processing kind of goodness things that exists there. And then don't forget, take a look in the show notes of this episode. There's a link to everything that we talk about, including the business that we'll talk about, Urbavore Farm, social media things if you want to go find them. And there's also a company mentions page that will have listing of all of the companies and people that we've talked to throughout this Capitalism for Good series. So be sure to find that, and also listen all the way to the end to hear the cool version of kind of full circle of how I found them. Today we have Brooke Salvaggio. She is the owner of Urbavore Farm in Kansas City. It's a 13-acre farm in the city limits of Kansas City. She's also the previous owner of Bad Team Farm, if you have heard of that, if you live in the area, as well as Casey Compost Collective. And wow, is this conversation cool. It is a part of the theme of a lot of the conversations that we've been having recently with business leaders utilizing their businesses to kind of leverage them for this activism, to really push the limits, change the way people are thinking and living and consuming and having conversations and all of these different types of things. And we get into the arts of it, the activism of it, the restrictions in as far as zoning and city limits, and the political aspects of how to keep organizations and companies like this functioning when they have the ability to literally feed the neighbors, empower the neighbors' houses, and provide this cool community and education ecosystem. And in this just very cool thing, we talk about just some intuition things. We talk about the intentionality of all of the decisions that go into every decision that you make when you're building a values-based company, especially when you're doing it just from the natural step of doing it for yourself because this is what you believe in, you want to do. And we talk a little bit about nonprofits versus for-profits and how they fit into this ecosystem and they interact with one another, which, spoiler alert, is a much larger conversation that honestly could probably take years and years to really get to the root of it, and how to untangle those things in a way that really will support what both purpose-driven businesses and a lot of nonprofit businesses are attempting to do. Again, that is a conversation for later. We also just talk about the human aspects of what it's like to be a young, naive person in their early to mid 20s versus having the experience, or what we will call a little bit of the jadedness of having 20 more years of experience there. And I cannot thank Brooke enough for having this conversation and for talking about all of the things and really kind of getting into all of this, and also for outlining what her big giant dream for what the future of this farm and this community and the ripple effects of how it could be reproduced outside of this community might look, and all of the good that can be done there. And I'm so excited about it. I think it's a really important and impactful conversation. And with that, and we'll stop talking and I will let her take over. Enjoy. Like, how did you get started with the farm and how did that become a business for you?
For one, I am not a business person. I am not an academic. I don't consider myself of higher intelligence. I'm a very intuitive person who feels a lot. And I like to work with my hands. And so I really never imagined myself in an entrepreneurial landscape necessarily. I'm an activist at heart. Again, I just feel a lot, I observe a lot, and then I want to do whatever I can to help. You know, I'm not actually trained in anything. I dropped out of art school. I was a bad student in high school. I didn't go to class very often. I'm a rebel, like,
Yeah.
in so many ways. So the way I got into this essentially was I had dropped out of art school. I sort of viewed the visual arts at one point as my medium to transform the world and,
Mm.
do my environmental activism or my food activism or whatever it was. When I got super involved with the arts community, I realized that there was a lot of superficialness and shallowness that I wasn't very
Mm.
comfortable with. And that's not to say that the fine arts aren't an incredible space full of incredible humans, but it didn't feel like a place where I could be authentic.
Yeah.
So I think I was looking for something a little grittier, a little more rustic, a little, I don't know. You still have to live up to a certain image and be part of a certain scene in the art world, and that did not sit well with me at all. So I think I really leaned into my activism when I left the art world, and I was kind of left with, okay, I'm sort of abandoning my identity as a fine artist in this space with these other artists, and where do I go now? And how do I achieve my goals outside of this space? Like, I just want to be able to impact the world. I had so many different causes, and how do I narrow it down and get into one space where I can impact so many things, like get to the core of the web, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I found dirt. It's like you strip everything else away, you hunker down and you get your hands in the dirt and you're like, wait, okay, now I'm at the core. This is where everything starts, Mother Nature, food, I mean, the nourishment. This is what we need to survive. This is what the planet needs to, survive and thrive. Our interaction with the earth and how we eat is really at the core of everything. That, in my, chaotic early 20s brain, I decided, okay, well, I need to go travel the world. I need to go to older parts of the world, peel back the layers, and start there. So, in order to fund those travels, I worked on organic farms in exchange for room and board. And really, at that point, I didn't have the green thumb or the farming bug or even the dirt bug. I just felt like that was the best way to connect with real people and sort of the conversations that spawn over being hunched over in the dirt with some guy who doesn't even speak the same language as you while you're pulling potatoes from the ground. I mean, that was a great place for me to start, and that really was sort of an aha moment for me. It was like, wow, when I have my hands in the soil and I'm cultivating food with people from different walks of life, I felt like I'd finally kind of come to a more literally grounded place, but figuratively
Mm.
grounded in my soul, I guess, to not sound too hippy dippy. But I felt, wow, this feels very stable, and I feel like I can achieve my goals from this stable space, and that more than anything I can feed people and nourish people, and that's very real. And I needed something real to kind of be at the core of those other actions, because I think sometimes being an activist can kind of be very conceptual, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like,
Hmm.
and I need something concrete,
Yeah.
I mean, I think for myself too, I think humans were made to be very physical and to interact with their landscapes and their environments. We weren't meant to be removed from them and type and post and make bold statements, on social media. We were meant to be down in it, nourishing ourselves and nourishing the land that nourishes us and then nourishing our community. So for me, that physical element of it and that tactile element of really touching it is so important. Otherwise, I kind of just go crazy and I fall into those depression and anxiety loops that I think so many modern humans are in, especially if you're the type of modern human that has a big heart and you're sensitive and you feel a lot. It's tough to be a human today, you know.
Yeah.
Working on those farms is what directly connected me to agriculture. And then it made me think, huh, this doesn't have to be some crazy experience I have in another country. I can bring this back to my hometown and grow food for myself and my neighbors. This is real. I can do this. Nobody my age does this anymore, and none of my friends will have any idea what I'm talking about. But I can come back and do this. I think, too, like all the activism stuff aside, or like these greater environmental values or social values that maybe were swirling around in my head, I think also on a very practical, fundamental level, I wanted to provide for myself. Like, I didn't know how to challenge a system if I was going to be complicit within the system and relying on the system for my most basic needs. If I can grow my own food and create my own shelter, then, those are some pretty, big bases right there. And then that puts me in a better position to, start to give back and address some of those bigger issues.
So when did you move back to the Kansas City area?
So I kind of hopped around for a long time, but I came back in 2007,
Okay.
and I was 23, 24. I think I was turning 24 years old. So you got to understand, I'm still super young, super idealistic, pretty stupid, pretty non-realistic, incredibly naive.
Yeah.
Which I think served me because I don't think the 44-year-old Brooke probably wouldn't have had the nerve to do what the 24-year-old Brooke did. I probably
Yeah.
would have been, I'm still pretty out there, right? But I think enough of the world's sort of systems and realities like would have worn me down, as
Yeah.
when you get older. But at 24, I was like, I don't need anything. I'm not in a relationship. I don't have kids. I can live with a backpack and find a way to survive. I don't need income. I don't need insurance. Like I've got this, like so
Yeah.
it allowed me the freedom, So I came back and I kind of, in retrospect, I realized, wow, was I very like sensitive to other people's needs at the time? Like I came back and I ripped up my grandpa's backyard. Like he had a massive backyard in South KC. To me, I'm like, wow, this is an untapped resource. We got to grow some food here. And I think I probably told him I was starting a garden, and he was a huge garden enthusiast, so he loved that. But I may not have clearly outlined the degree to which I was starting a garden. Anyway, this like acre and a half backyard became sort of an edible oasis. It started as what I thought would be kind of a homestead, like my experiment in growing my own food. And at that point, you got to understand, I didn't even know what a tomato plant looked like. I knew
Oh, wow.
nothing. I mean, I'd worked on these farms in foreign countries, but these are totally different climates, totally different
Yeah.
crops, language barrier. At that point, it's more an experience. It's not like you're actually learning A, B, and C.
Right.
So I threw myself in and, I ripped up this suburban backyard with a beautiful lawn, which I'm sure kind of broke my grandpa's heart. Feel a little bad about now. The 24-year-old in me did not feel bad about this. I just started growing an insane amount of food. At the time I was farming, I say farming, let's just say gardening by day, and then I was working jobs at night to pay rent and just, pay the
Yeah.
bills, do the things you do. For me, that was great. Having the whole day to play in the dirt. And then, I was always really good at living simply and minimally, kind of have like a punk rock ethos and punk rock background. So I had a DIY way about me that allowed me to live without a lot of money coming in.
Yeah.
Which serves me today as a farmer, I got to tell you. I did that for about a season where I was working, other jobs at night, but I quickly realized, like, wow, I have a knack for this food growing thing. I have what they call a green thumb,
Hmm.
And there was a lot of food coming out of that plot. I was always jumping into so many things without thinking about them. And things like business plans were not even on my radar. So while I was ripping up my grandpa's backyard, I was also renting a warehouse space in the crossroads of Kansas City. So I'm like, I'm going to grow all my own food and maybe sell the excess, and I'll simultaneously start this punk rock farmers market. And I'll sell stuff there, and then I'll go to this other farmers market on 39th Street and sell whatever I've left. And so I kind of did all these things at once. And when I look back on it, I mean, again, I'm glad I had the nerve and the guts that I did back then, because it seems a little overwhelming now. But yeah, that's the great energy of being in your early 20s. I think we all do a lot of stupid things, but if you can channel that crazy, stupid energy in the right way, sometimes really cool stuff comes out of it.
Yeah.
So that backyard farm became Bad Seed Farm, and I simultaneously started the Bad Seed Farmers Market in the Crossroads in this sort of very alternative space. This was before the Crossroads blew up, before it was a ghost town back then. It's a whole different world now. And I look back fondly on the way it was back then. There was no power and light. There was no, I mean, you can call it gentrification. You could say that I'm part of the gentrification. I don't know. It was really just like struggling artists back
Mm.
then, and just real people. Very cool. The Bad Seed Farm and the Bad Seed Farmers Market is something I did from 2007 to 2010, and that is a long story of why that ended. But and the Bad Seed Farmers Market was in existence until 2015, late 2015, maybe early 2016. For the people who were part of that, I mean, I think they really remember that as one of the most unique businesses in Kansas City. If you could even call it a business, it was more of an expression. Such a cool space. It was more than a farmer's market. Some ways I called it kind of a green event space, but it was a place where humans came together in a really colorful way around food and food justice, but it was really rooted in the arts. And so it had, I don't know, there has never been anything like it, nor will there ever be anything like it, probably. And it kind of, it broke my heart when I made the decision to move on. That was a really hard decision. But I think what I'm doing now is technically more impactful, but it's not nearly as fun as the Bad Seed was. So.
Was there an intentionality there at all at that time to, hey, I need to bring food to my community because this is
Yeah.
a gap in the market? Or did that just kind of happen naturally? And then you were like, oh, this serves a purpose I didn't realize.
Sure. Gosh, it's just me with my explosive brain and actions. It's like the two things were happening at once. There was always this intentionality that I was going to change the system and the way people see their lawns and the way people see the grocery store and the way people see gardens. Like I was going to completely revolutionize. But because I never had like that business plan and those straightforward steps, it's like these things would just sort of manifest themselves alongside each other. It's like I'm being self-sufficient in homesteading. I'm feeding my community and changing the system for whatever reason. And I don't think I have that luck anymore. But there was such a beautiful synergy happening for me at that time. Like everything was falling into place. I look back and I think maybe when you have so much passion and so much pure, unadulterated intention that things do line up that way. Maybe that's not something that can last forever. Like the world is a cruel place and it will rain down on you at some point. But those were kind of the glory years, the golden days, if you will.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is what grew out of all that like possibility was, unfortunately, the stark reality that, and I hate to put it this way, like, 'cause I don't know how else to like frame it, but the stark reality that the man, whether that's the system or the government or even just the perceptions of modern humans who've gotten very used to living in a certain kind of world that looks a certain way, that eventually took its toll on Bad Seed Farm, on the Bad Seed Market. It didn't take its toll on me and my partner Dan. I mean, it did. It definitely killed a large part of my heart. But
Yeah.
I mean, we were able to forge ahead and reframe. It is worth saying that, we had a really beautiful run, and then the realities of the world at some point said, "Hey, we're not. What do you silly, colorful people think you're doing in this backyard? Like, you can't just grow gorgeous gardens and sell food to people. That's not okay. Like, we have lawns, and don't put up a clothesline, and don't, you know what I mean? Like, we have rules here. The food comes from the grocery store, and property values must stay like this." And it was hard for my 24-year-old punk rock artist self to accept the framework of the world that I, for whatever reason, thought I didn't have to abide by.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that in some way, like, I think is such the beauty of youth. Like, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm pretty jaded. I'm still fighting, but I'm jaded. At that age, thought there was endless possibility.
Yeah.
And in a way, to tie it back to kind of what I was saying, I think it was that blind optimism and just unadulterated passion and energy and goodwill that carried us during that time. And that has had to kind of change and mature now. And it's not the same thing anymore at all. I'm thankful that I got to experience that, because not everyone
Mhm.
gets to experience that. I think a lot of people feel like there's a foot down on their heads, always has been. They never were able to rise up and kind of seek their potential and
Mhm.
live in kind of that perfect space for a minute.
Yeah. That makes me think. A couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a woman who owns a online CSA in the Seattle area that's all like
Right.
very local, closed loop economy focused.
Right.
And one of the tangents that she and I got off on was I'd been thinking a lot about kind of our modern world and the shiny solution that AI tends to present itself as, or replace AI with modern technology or
Right.
whatever happens to be at the forefront at the time. And I was like, what I can't wrap my brain around is if we have supposedly this technology that is supposed to solve all of our problems and give us all of the answers and be able to like make our lives so much easier. And if we also have people at that time that I was talking to her, we were not far off of what was happening with withholding of SNAP benefits. So we were having a
Right.
lot of discussions about like hunger and food insecurity and all of the like the way that fits into the system. And I was like, if there's a person who needs to eat, as we all do, and then we have people in your community who are growing food, whether it's in their backyards or in like larger farms, how is the answer not obviously give the food from the neighbor with the farm to the neighbor
People
that
in
needs the food? Like
need.
that seems to me so obviously like the answer. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like that punk rock mentality that you had in your younger years of like, yes, food. Give the people the
Yeah,
food,
yeah.
like come in, community, all the things. And I wonder where you
100%.
are now with that. We can call it jadedness, or we can
Yeah,
call it
yeah.
like wisdom, or whatever it
Sure,
is of your
sure.
age. Like,
Fine line between jadedness and wisdom, I will say.
yeah, where do you land now with that?
The thing about, and I haven't talked about Dan, and I won't like go into a tangent on Dan, but you'll hear me say Dan, and Dan is my partner in crime or in excellence or whatever you call it, my partner in sustainability. As much as I say the system has jaded us and we have changed and evolved, the funny thing is that very simple I grow food, and these people need to eat and they are right over there. You know, that has never changed for us. We will die on that, hill, right? Like the city and so many forces are challenging us to break that simple line of I grow food and I make soil out of people's food waste, and I want those same people to eat the food, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like we refuse to abandon that logic, like I'm a as like hippie frou-frou as we may seem, or as kind of out there, I am a big believer in logic. And to
Hmm.
me, that is logical. I am right here on this vast piece of urban land growing really nutrient dense food in people's trash, essentially, right? Through
Hmm.
composted food scraps from the community. There is absolutely no reason, A, why I shouldn't be doing that when everyone
Yeah.
needs to eat. And B, there's absolutely no reason why my community shouldn't be consuming that food. And if you want to put obstacle after obstacle after obstacle in front of me, I may get jaded, but I will keep climbing over every obstacle until I die because I can't abandon the most basic, not just the most basic of my convictions, but the most basic logic, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I abandon that logic, what do I have? Like some bullshit world where I'm on AI, or what do I have? Do I go get the office job?
Yeah.
Work for some corporation and be like, "Oh God, I love my health insurance plan that I get through them." Or, what do I do? Dan and I've been beaten so hard and bloodied at this point. And sure, we wake up every day like, are we going to keep doing it? Should we keep going? But the answer is yes. We will keep going and they will beat us down some more. But I guess that logic, or this point to this point and that line to that point, not only is that not changed for us, I think
Mhm.
we're only more resolute to stand our ground and be exactly that. And people love us for that, and some people really hate us for that.
Of course.
You know?
Of course. I recently moved from Louisville to I'm in Lee Summit now. So
Okay. Wow.
I'm
Wow.
an
Big
actual neighbor.
difference. Lee Summit and I can't say Louisville the way you do, but yes, I can't say it like a local.
The
Um,
big difference was before that, I was in Seattle, Washington, and
whew,
moving from Seattle to Louisville was like a
little
culture
culture
shock. And
shock.
I'm a Midwesterner at heart. I grew up mostly in Lee Summit, and I like
Sure.
it just was a lot. But
But it's still jarring, even if you're a Midwesterner at heart, which I am too,
yes, yeah.
very jarring.
It's yeah. And of course, with the move, I'm like selling things that we don't need anymore. It's a
Mhm.
transition. I'm selling stuff on eBay and wherever, just like trying to,
Doing all the
make it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. I got my first like negative review on eBay after like years and years of selling and reselling. No, this is going to kill you because the issue that this person had was I sent it in a paper package and not a plastic package. And I quote, my unsolicited advice to you is that you need to invest in a bunch of plastic envelopes and packages to send things. Obviously, you cannot send clothes in any kind of a paper package. And I was just like,
Was the garment damaged, or was it just the idea that there was a paper package?
garment totally undamaged. The envelope did actually, like, it did get scratched up, but like nothing. And
Come
I like tried to
on.
send the money. I was like, let me give you your money back. No, no,
It's
no. Just angry that I didn't use plastic.
right,
And therefore,
right.
and I was
You're
like,
going above and beyond to even fix what is a ridiculous claim, right? You're
mm-hmm.
not even trying to explain yourself. You're just saying, you know what? Okay, I hear you. Let
Yeah,
me make you happy.
yeah,
And I have the
yeah.
exact same experiences. And it's crazy. Sometimes I think I need thicker skin, but I really have a hard time with that transactional relationship. For me, I need to be really real and honest and vulnerable with all humans at all times. So social media, like the comments, like I can't handle it. Negative reviews are really difficult for me because I can't just like have this human interaction.
Uh-huh.
I think it puts people in a very unnatural situation to begin with. And I
Yeah.
don't think we can be the best version of ourselves within that, you know? don't, the thought you put in, it wasn't about you being cheap with the plastic,
Right.
not using the plastic. You were actually being incredibly thoughtful to use the paper.
That's what I just kept getting stuck on is like, I mean, honestly, the papers and or the plastic's a non-negotiable, but like, what
Right,
can I do?
right. Totally.
Obviously, I
I
don't
love
want someone to be
non-negotiables.
unhappy and like all of these different things. And
Absolutely.
anyway,
And that, that hits on a good point. Like I think as a radical business owner or, someone like me who's very rooted in my principles. I'm a small business owner. I understand this idea of the customer's always right. I am a master of customer service. And frankly, some people say it's fake. I like being really nice to other humans and making them happy. So, it comes naturally to me and I don't mind it. But I've tr in our business, it's like, yes, we have these non-negotiables. And one of those is yes, the paper packaging or the not caving to whatever modern idea it is about how something should be presented at the expense of the environment. Another non-negotiable is making people happy. So somehow I have to uphold both. And
yeah,
I do think we do that really well. Like we don't compromise our principles while still making the incredibly unreasonable customer happy. And that's
mhm.
very hard to do. And I, a lot of business owners will say, screw that. I am not going to spend my time and energy. And I respect that. I sometimes I wish I could be a little less accommodating.
Yeah,
I am a people pleaser for better or for worse. It's like it's really hard to be someone who's absolutely unwilling to compromise their convictions, but is also a hardcore people pleaser. Those things are
uh-huh.
contradictory.
I relate. Uh-huh.
So, but that is me, and that's how I run a business. And I think that in some ways is kind of key to our success. You
Yeah.
know?
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about all of the intentionality that you put
Yes,
into what the farm is now? I mean, everything from we could talk about the food, we can talk
I
about the
know.
building, the water, the
Talk about
solar, the
so many
compost, the
aspects.
apprenticeships. Like,
Yeah,
I want to talk about all of the details of the things that you were choosing as you were building something that is so core to everything that you believe in.
right. Yeah, intentionality, like talk about going down the rabbit hole. At some point, we had bought completely raw land. There was no water, no electricity, nothing on it, and it is located in Kansas City,
Yeah,
this
that's
perfect
wild.
core. It's wild, right? And so because it's not just this raw piece of land out in the middle of nowhere where we can throw up our hippie buildings that are all green and like, you know, not ask anybody, it was the complete opposite. Every single thing we do out here, even if it's just digging a ditch, needs an immense amount of approvals, permitting, sometimes a lot of money exchanged. I'm not even like knocking that system. So we did our absolute best to follow all of that bureaucracy, which some of it is totally fair. It's about safety. Some
Right.
of it is absolutely arbitrary. So you've got both things happening. When you're trying to follow these kind of absurdly bureaucratic directions just to get water, to make shelter, and you're trying to do it sustainably with considering the material of everything, whether it's the baseboards that are going down against the foundation of your house, or it's the type of beams you're using, what material are they, where do they come from, or it's the type of hardware you're using. I mean, every little thing, the type of toilet you're using, like, is
Yeah.
it compostable? Like, what does it do? Does it flush water into some water system that I have no control over and don't really like how that water is treated? And then, whatever.
Hmm.
So we're going down the rabbit hole with every little thing while trying to appease a bureaucracy that, like I said, I'm not knocking it totally because I'm not. I am again, I'm a logical person. Sometimes when you live in a city with lots of humans and we're all together and we're trying to make sure everyone's safe and things work, there are definitely rules and regs that make sense. But
Right.
then there's things that don't. And we had a hell of a time navigating that. We still do. It's been 15 years of us trying to make like responsible water, shelter, energy, and waste recycling work on this piece of land. Can you imagine? Like, I mean, I'd say we're still not even 20-30% of the way in, although
Wow.
we've spent every penny and every ounce of our energy outside of growing food, building the infrastructure and creating the workings of the farm, the systems of the farm.
Yeah.
And again, most people would have given up. Most people would have said, screw that. I mean, at this point, this really is like our lifelong masterpiece. This farm is the magnum opus, God, if I had known in those early 20s days of what this project really was going to look like, and that 15 years in, I'm still going to be sitting in the home we built, the roof is leaking and the city won't let me fix it because of some permit being frozen or some this, that, or the other. I mean, like, would I have done it? I don't know,
Yeah.
but we are doing it, and it has honestly, and this is depressing. I think it's only gotten harder, like
Mm.
it was hard enough to sort of break ground here, get the designs together and convince the city to let us do it in this alternative way with non-toxic materials and do it in a way that the whole design of the home, for instance, is very different than a typical home. It's kind of an earth berm passive solar design. So you're convincing the city to kind of embrace a very unconventional format in the first place. And then within that, you're trying to work in all those sustainable little pieces to fit their box. It's that round or that, square peg in a round hole kind of thing the whole time. And so we very patiently navigated it. We've thrown so much money and research into it too. So you really have to be committed to your environmental convictions
Yeah.
to do this.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, even in the beginning, it was smoother. Really, in the last 3 years, 3, 4 years, been heavily scrutinized by the city.
Mm.
Even after being here for so long and kind of becoming an institution in Kansas City, we are now under the microscope, and the scrutiny is so it's becoming harder now than ever, and we've kind of reached a standstill. Like we have not been able to improve or finish projects for 3 years now. And like I said, so I live in a house that I can't fix the roof; it's leaking on us. I've got aspects of the home that are actually, frankly, kind of unsafe that I'm
Yeah.
not allowed to fix
It's
because
going against supposedly what these rules and regulations
yes,
were
yes.
meant for.
It's really hard. Dan and I have spent the better part of the last 3 years advocating and trying to work through these issues. We spent a lot more energy on that than we have like leading a healthy life and like being able to
Yeah.
put our energy into our farm and our business, even though we have to
Mm.
do them all at once.
Right.
I mean, it's a 24/7 thing. We are definitely being tested to the max
Mm.
right now. And if we overcome this, I guess I can't even confidently say that we will overcome it. I guess I can confidently say that I'll keep showing up every day. That's
Yeah.
that's really all I can say. The world's kind of a depressing place right now. Like a lot is going on. And it's funny how our micro battles in a lot of ways mimic these macro battles that are happening globally. It's crazy to kind of like move between both spaces. For the most part, I have to keep my head down and literally tend the ground like 1, 2, 3 feet in front of me, right? Like that's
Mhm.
that's the only way to get through this, and to stay true to my mission of feeding people, right?
Yeah.
Because I could totally get distracted and just, you know,
Yeah. In order to feed people, especially in a way in which is best and safest and most environmentally
right?
responsible, socially responsible, on a macro level, it takes all of these micro decisions. And
It
like
does. It
the more that you're
absolutely
talking about
does.
these fights with the city, I'm just like, but at the end of the day, what you guys are building on the farm could, in theory, be replicated. And like that's
That's
advocacy in
that,
and
and
of
that's
itself.
it's so cool. I mean, yeah, to put a more positive spin on it, what Urbavore is and what the Compost Collective KC Hub is at Urbavore. I mean, this whole thing in some way is an experiment in alternative sustainable urban living
Yeah.
and sustainable food production and waste management within an urban space. And it's super cool because nobody else in the entire country is doing anything remotely like this.
Yeah.
Okay. It's super cutting edge on some level, and yet so not cutting edge because it couldn't be more back to the earth practical than, I mean, it's so that I've always found that ironic that what we're doing is so radical when really all it is like nurturing soil and producing the most basic needs for people without harming communities and the environment. So
Yeah.
super radical. It's not profit driven. It's none of those things. I guess that's what makes it radical in this day and age, especially
I know.
in terms of this podcast, capitalism for good. It's very radical to have profits not driving literally any of your decisions. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
might just be stupid on some level for a business owner, but I'm okay with that kind of stupidity. So, yeah, this is essentially a blueprint for how farms could coexist in neighborhoods throughout the country. Like an herbivore, in so many ways, could be plopped in every single neighborhood in the country. What that could mean from an impact level, from a resource level, is mind-boggling. I mean, we could hypothetically, and some of this it's not hypothetical, we're already doing it, but hypothetically, a 13.5 acre space like ours could produce enough food and not just vegetables. I'm talking, meat, I'm talking eggs, I'm talking, other very substantial food groups. Also flowers and feel good stuff too. Herbs, teas, medicinals, like I could go on and on. But we could produce enough of that kind of stuff to feed the entire neighborhood. I mean, like, I'm thinking hundreds of families. And that, again, this is just a little 13.5 acre space. It's not that big. We can also take in more than that neighborhood's worth of compostable organic waste. That's not just food scraps, that's a plethora of paper products from toilet paper rolls to pizza boxes to all your paper towels, your napkins. There's really a long list of organic waste material that we make in a household. We could take in all of that from more than just the neighborhood. We could produce enough solar energy to power at least 60 to 80 homes within that neighborhood. So certainly all the neighboring properties that like would touch the farm and then maybe out from there. We could harness enough water from street runoff and neighboring rooftops to have more than enough irrigation for the food. We could create, and this is all within the same space, like still plenty of room to grow the food and do the composting. We could have on-farm education. We could essentially be a school, and the school's campus is the farm. Students meander through fields and orchards to get to one like nature-based classroom to the other. So we can be an education hub as well. And all these things, Dan and I have been slowly but surely setting up with zero support from investors, from politicians, I mean, we're just a couple crazy kids who had no money who built this from the ground up. That is the truth. We paid for this with turnips and beets that we grew in a field without irrigation and water and electricity. Like, I mean, it sounds crazy, and people think I'm full of shit when I tell them that. They're like, no, surely you had a trust fund. You're lying. This is white privilege. This is, and I'm not even gonna get into that conversation,
Yeah.
but this is true. We are white, so there's privilege there.
Right.
But
Right.
we did this. We did this because we were nuts and we were willing to sacrifice every minute of every day towards this goal. We know how to live without spending money. We're incredibly DIY. We eat the food that we grow. We're anti-consumers to the max, okay? And we were able to sort of thwart the system and thwart the whole money game that everyone thinks is keeping you from doing things like that. We really did build this from the ground up, and so the stage is set to create a community farm that can be so much more than a food growing hub, and we actually even have part of our deal with the city, something that actually would have been a cure-all for everything we're experiencing is we spent over a year with a really incredible architectural firm and a lawyer and a group of very professional, highly paid, intelligent people to create what's called a master plan development, which was a 30-year vision for this farm, for this blueprint that I keep talking about. And it is complete with all the elements and more of what I just mentioned, from the education to the community solar, powering your neighborhood, to a compost heated greenhouse. So you're taking the people's food waste that you're turning into soil to grow food for them is actually heating a massive greenhouse,
So
that can
cool.
provide
Yeah.
food year round. So many cool ideas. And they're not just like pie in the sky ideas. They are at our fingertips. I mean, we are capable of making them happen very quickly
Yeah.
if allowed to do so. We created this master plan development, this 30-year vision. It was an amazingly expensive undertaking. And we presented this to the city. And had that development plan been approved, we would be 100% golden today. And we could
Yeah.
just move forward with doing the good things that we do. But as it stands, that plan did not pass. There's a lot of really ugly political things happening. It's not serving the people at all. We're back to square one where we're fighting a lot of different zoning violations and a lot of different violations, whether they're truly violations or not. I mean, there's definitely been there's
Right.
some legal question as to the city's position. We're just in handcuffs, and it's so sad because this vision is like it's right there. You can almost taste it, right? The powers that be don't want to reserve any space for something like that to come to fruition. This is a sad truth, but a big piece of property like this, I think they see a farm like this, some idiots growing some turnips in a field, is more a holding pattern for development.
Mm.
And when this land becomes ripe for development and someone can line their pockets off some whatever it is, that's really how the city views the use or the fate of a piece of land like this.
Yeah.
The saddest thing, though, is we're in the third district, which is, we are east of Troost. We are on the historically disadvantaged side of town. Our neighborhood is super unique in that it's actually historically white and still majority white to this day, but we have an incredible amount of diversity here. You will see white families and black families living house to house. And in
Yeah.
this segregated Kansas City world, that may sound like, well, what's the big deal? No, that's unheard of.
That's huge. Yeah.
And it was part of what drew us to this neighborhood. Unfortunately, our district reps, they do not share our vision, and they definitely would like to frame us or create a narrative of the white business owner oppressor. That's a convenient narrative, and that is a narrative that is so true, okay, in a
Yeah.
lot of different places right now and throughout history. So I'm not denying that that is not a framework that is ugly and that exists and that permeates even. That is not this. And that narrative serves them because at the end of the day, it's not the betterment of this community and the neighbors that they're concerned with. They are concerned with the dollars and the cents, and they want this land to be able to be developed at some point. And they want to continue to be able to make certain decisions that benefit them personally over the community while being able to spin the idea that they're holding back the racist white farmer to better the people on the ground floor. And I'm going to be honest, it's complete and absolute bullshit. And my neighbors
Yeah.
know it too. The majority of them understand that. The majority of them support this farm 100%. Those voices are hushed and the few are elevated to fit the narrative. And that's tricky. And this is coming from a radical, woke, liberal diva over here.
Yeah.
Like one thing that's been in my wizened, jaded 40-something-year-old self, I've seen how even my own political sort of narratives can misrepresent sometimes and
Mm.
have devastating consequences. So I've
Yeah.
become a little smarter. I mean, this sort of like post woke reckoning, which I don't even know if anyone's using these terms. Because I'm in my post woke reckoning. It doesn't mean I don't agree with woke ideals. I absolutely do. But I've watched things in real time happen to me and my family that have challenged a lot of narratives. I've been taken out of my own political comfort zone and had to like turn around and look in and start to call things for what they are instead
Yeah.
of just putting things into convenient categories as I
Yeah.
see them without digging a little deeper. It's an uncomfortable space to be, believe me. I'd rather just be able to chant the same rally cries as all my fellow radical liberals and not challenge myself. But when something comes up short, I feel like it is my duty to call it out so we can evolve and do better. And that's kind of my job as a farmer too. I have to like exist in the ecosystem as it really is and not pretend it's a certain way or call it a certain thing. Like Mother Nature is an incredibly complex thing. It is not black and white. And there are so many things at play all at once. And a lot of those things can be quite devastating, honestly, and quite beautiful all at once. And I have to adapt and interact with that constantly. And if I can't adapt my social politics in the same way or the way I navigate the world amongst the people and the powers that be, then I'm really like not living up to my potential as a human. And I'm really only using a very small part of my brain. That whole piece of it has been life-changing, because part of our whole demise and the handcuffs we have right now, there's a piece of that where we have been framed a certain way as racists or appropriators of Afro-Indigenous farming practices. A lot of terminology being thrown at us from people who have never visited the farm and don't even understand the viewpoints of the folks who live next door to them. I'd say it's a tangent, but at the same time, it's incredibly relevant to my existence every day and to whether or not I'll continue to exist on this place and do the work that I do and feed the people that I feed. If that's not like, like I don't want to say the F word, but a mind fuck, then
You
I don't
can.
know
Yeah.
what is. Yeah. And God, you know what? All I wish I could do right now, though, is just like stop existing in these crazy bubbles and fighting to not only just like explain myself and my true humanity and fighting the city and these powers that be. I wish I could just think about like, my crop rotation and my native plant gardens and the understory I'm planting under the apple trees and like the bird population that I'm trying to attract. And those are the things I really want to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And and for those who don't understand farming, it is one of the hardest, most demanding jobs. It takes every ounce of you every day and it never turns off. Profit margins are incredibly slim, especially if you're going to stick to certain environmental ideals like we do and not do a lot of things that most farms, even certified organic farms, do. When you're not going to use the certain technologies at your disposal, and a lot of those technologies are comprised of plastic, which is why we don't, it is a heck of a laborious undertaking. So we're kind of pulled in these just incredibly unsustainable web of directions where we fight to keep doing what we do. We're crouched over in the fields all day long to just do what we actually do, right? Like, and I would be lying if I said I haven't had a series of mental breakdowns in the last 30 years. So when we talk
Yeah.
about the sustainability of like small business, like I think it can be a very sustainable, incredible undertaking. But I would say the type of small business that we are and the type of small farm that we are, it is capitalism for good. I don't know if it's sustainable or good for us anymore. If that, like, that's
Mm,
hard to say because I'm not saying I'm getting off the ride. It's like while these people who are out trying to do good green business, is it just good for the environment and their customers? Or is it also good for them? Who are we sustaining here? Like
yeah.
I believe in this life and I know I couldn't live a different life even with all its hardships, but most sane people would have gotten off the ride and chosen an easier go of things by now.
I think this is a really important conversation to have, though. I think what you're describing here, at least from my perspective, is these two polar opposite ends of capitalism. Like you have, if
Precisely.
you're just talking about like the city and the developers and the economic pressure, and by economic, I mean like of the people that own the
Yes.
housing developments and the big
The
giant
people who,
businesses and
right,
all of the places that
benefit.
probably want to buy you. And they're like, we'll
Hmm.
just wait until we can offer them enough money to get them out of here.
Hmm.
And there's that part of it. And I think that is the piece of capitalism that turns so many people off when they are frustrated with the powers that be and like what has become of it. And that's so frustrating because I view you all as the opposite end of
Right.
capitalism and truly
100%.
utilizing capitalism for good and being good for your neighbors. If those people that are saying we're not going to approve your plans for the city because of whatever reason, if they truly had the best interest of the people in mind, they
Right.
obviously logic would win out. It would be you are feeding the people next to you, you are powering their homes, that
Right.
is bringing costs down, that is helping them live, that is actually bringing a better life to your community and your neighbors in a very direct and tangible way that
And we're still paying a ton of taxes to the city. Like the city is still making money off us existing. It's not that we're
yeah,
just a leech. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah.
they still get their capital gain. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you're still investing into those like
Right. And investing
social safety nets and all of
heavily
those
into the
things.
community.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
But then there's this piece that I think is so important. And I don't know that I've heard anyone else talk about it until you responded to my email with this point about
Right.
the sustainable impact of the people leading it in as humans.
Right.
And I want to look at the world with rose-colored glasses that
Sure.
says, hey, I know things are really hard and I know it's like beating you down, but what if we got enough collective effervescence around you to
Right.
actually support what you're doing and to get you to be the most popular option, to win over
Right.
the city, to
Sure.
win
Sure.
over
Sure.
the
Sure.
whatever, and to like quiet the voices of the loud, powerful, money-hungry people.
Right.
Like that would make your job easier. That would make this easier to
100%.
be
It
sustainable
would.
as humans. But that doesn't sound like it's what you're experiencing at this
I
time.
guess, there's definitely a critical mass that perhaps we could reach with composting customers. I don't really feel like we have a problem growing food or selling the food we grow because it's human powered. There is only a finite amount of food that can be grown, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I love how like the farm keeps it self-sustainable depending on how we do it. Like I can only seed this many of that and I can only pull this many of that. Like no matter how fast I move, I can only ask this much of my soil. I
Yeah.
can only spread compost this fast. There is a critical mass within the composting business that I think it would help with the finances and
Yeah.
help us maybe sacrifice a little less every day in order to like live baseline comfortably. I mean, people always
Yeah.
think, oh, you own two businesses, like you must like live with a lot of creature comforts. It's like, no,
Right.
we live with zero. We actually sacrifice those so we can sustain the two
Yeah.
businesses. But yes, that would give us more cushion, and I could hire more labor and maybe not work 80 hours a week, right? I think another piece that I've had to delve into right now is we have not raised our prices for food in years, if maybe just not
Mm.
ever. And we need to do serious price increases. The problem is local
Yeah.
organic food is already expensive, even compared to subsidized grocery store food that comes from a very exploited system. Even though that system, that industrial food model is totally exploited and false, and you're not seeing the real cost of the food when you go to the grocery store and purchase that item, it's still what we as small scale organic farmers have to compete with, right? We can ask
Yeah.
more, but we can't ask, we can't compete at all if we,
Yeah.
ask too much more. And
Yeah.
also because I'm a food activist and I empathize with working class people or the poor segments of the community, because guess what? I'm a working class person. I've always worked really hard to keep my prices even lower than the other organic guys, right? I'm okay with sacrificing for what I believe to a point. One thing that is so critical is that human beings, wherever you are on the economic spectrum, really try to consider like this idea of paying for what something is worth and trying to find creative ways to support the things that you care about. I make a lot of sacrifices in the way I purchase so that when I do purchase, I can purchase, pay a fair price for something that doesn't harm so many other entities. And one of my problems, and I've mentioned this sort of post-woke world, is I've found that so many people like fuck capitalism and fuck these businesses. And like, there is an attitude that we should all just be bending over backwards and giving away everything for free. And I'm going to tell you guys, like, no, if you want good, fair, just systems to exist, then there is going to have to be some fair exchange. Like we all have to sacrifice, not just the green business that you hold on a pedestal. We all have to make sacrifices for the betterment of our planet and each other. And it is not just about demanding that certain people make those sacrifices while you just keep holding out your hand and saying, gimme, gimme, gimme. I can run a really lean business that asks for a really, really fair price. Maybe not even fair. Maybe like actually my prices are too low, and they are. I can ask a certain price for my service or my food and hope that other logical humans will pay that price because they're going to get more than what they paid for with us. And then I can be out there actually doing the work, growing the food, and then getting fair compensation for the work. Is that crazy? And if you're not profit driven, which, okay, we're not, you can believe me or not, but if your higher goals are impacting your community and your environment in a positive way, and you truly stick to that, and you can somehow make the numbers work, nobody loses. It really works. It's so basic. Let's not mess it up with all these foundations and make it complicated. Let's get back to basics, people. Do good shit, support good shit. End of story. I think.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question that I have for everyone is, who's another business and or leader that you see out there in the world doing things the right way? And it could be anyone from someone that you work with, someone that has helped you, a mentor, someone that you're a customer of, absolutely anyone that you think deserves a shout out.
Yeah, I felt like, and I saw that on the list of questions, and I felt like really horrible that no one immediately jumped into my mind. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Am I like, why don't I immediately have like 20 people? There are so many business owners that I know and love and respect, but I actually have a hard time thinking of business owners that are really rewriting the way that business is done. I think a lot of people are tied, are handcuffed to a certain system. And this will sound horrible, but I'm not, at least in my world, I'm not aware of other business owners in Kansas City necessarily who sacrifice quite as much as Dan and I do on a daily basis. And I think we're stupid for it. Like, so it's not like points for me, I'm so selfless. It's not that. I have a really hard time relating to other business owners. I love them and I respect them, but my life as a business owner is super different. I'm not like removed on in a more managerial side of it. Honestly, like so many spinning plates every day that come crashing down on our heads, and then it's 10 p.m. you got to go water the pigs, and you're like, it's really different. But what I finally came to, because I wanted to name someone in the Kansas City business landscape, what I came to is like, well, who's inspired me really recently though? And I went to a vegetable growers conference in St. Joe. It's something that's held every year. And I was speaking about compost powered food systems, yada, yada, yada. And I got the chance to run into a farmer that I've always deeply respected. His name is Curtis Millsap, and he has Millsap Farm in Springfield. Missouri. And this is not actually someone okay, if you ask me this normally, I would want to pick a female with brown skin. Right. Okay. Like hands down. I am not going to name a white male. Right. But if I'm being really honest about who has recently really touched me, it is this Amish looking white guy who's probably super religious. I'm very secular, by the way. I respect everybody's beliefs, but I'm very secular. Okay. So I'm not, there's no like Christian leaning. Okay. So super religious Amish looking guy with a beard, but he is one of the most gentle, impactful humans that I have come across in years. His philosophy, the way he interacts with other people, the way he can remain practical but full of love at all times is mind-boggling. And what he has done in his Springfield community with his farm, I've never seen anything like it. The amount of community that literally just like flourishes around this place. It's an oasis. It's bizarre. I don't see that here at all, no matter how many years I've tried to cultivate community in my neighborhood, which is its own sort of sad reality. But,
Yeah.
what Curtis has created, it's so unique. It's people from all walks of life that are just like it's almost like they're blooming on this piece of land that he is sown with all these seeds and in this and there's this like whole ecosystem of humans that's been created there, and they're all ages ranging from infants to elderly folks, and they're just kind of swirling around this farm and existing. And yet this farm is a business that has no nonsense like crops that need to get to people. And he somehow can juggle the just very practical everyday grind of running a farm with this otherworldly sort of like community oasis, and I don't know how he does it. He's a human he's got something very, very special. So and as far as like embracing community within business, like I think that's a whole theme, that we could talk about. Like, how do you engage your community, and how does a business not just become its own little profit-seeking engine with its services or products? How does it actually become part of a social ecosystem? And he's the perfect example of that. Millsap Farm, Springfield, Missouri. He's incredible.
I have to tell you, so before I lived in Washington, when I told you my story about how I've traveled all around, before I lived in Washington, I lived in Springfield, Missouri for 10 years.
Oh my God. So
And
you know who I'm talking about.
I was a part of the CSA. I have worked on that farm. And when I moved back to Kansas City and was like, okay, looking for business owners to incorporate
Right.
into this project, and I came across Urbavore Farm, and I was like, man, this seems so much
Oh,
like
kind of
Millsap, and I
reminds
love it
me of
so
the mill.
much.
It's got a Millsapian vibe. Well, that's flattering me. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I've got friends who have hosted dinners at that farm, and their pizza
Yeah,
have been married there. Like, it is
totally.
so cool.
And
It's so cool.
the last thing I'll say about that, because it is so relevant, what Curtis is doing with community
Yes.
is largely possible because he's been able to do that within the city's codes. Whereas we do and have tried to do the exact same things, but we're not allowed to here.
Yeah.
So I can't, by law, cultivate the community that Curtis has cultivated.
Mm.
And that's in and of itself very disturbing to me,
Yeah.
So he will always be like that pie in the sky, even though Urbavore has all the bone work and the framework to be doing that and has done that, but has had like a lid put on it, you know?
Ugh. Yeah.
I know. It's
Mm.
crazy. And it's not that doesn't have challenges and doesn't have to work with the city. He does. But the city has been very collaborative with him and recognizes what an incredibly valuable asset he is. And so they've been able to work together to find that sweet spot. And that is what we have not been able to do with the city of KCMO, which is really, really unfortunate.
I'm gonna say yet. You haven't done it yet. I've
Yeah.
got
Yes. Yet's a good word. I love that. I hope, yes, you use yet, even if I sometimes feel like I can't. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anytime you
I
just
like
need to hear the
that.
word yet, give me a
Yeah.
call. I'll be there because
Totally.
I
Totally.
I believe in what you guys are doing so much. I've loved talking to you. I love
Me
all of
too.
this. I truly